Hello, I am very pleased to say that I'm with Ben Hunt today. Hi, Ben.
Hi, good to see you, Mark.
Hi. That was very monosyllabic. Hi. Um, Ben and I go back about, 12 years? Something
Yeah,
like that.
has to be.
And it's kind of strange that we're talking about what we're about to talk about because there's a kind of a war zone. We're in a war, basically. And Ben and I used to have fun talking about internet marketing and websites and all that kind of jazz because we both work in that field. But this is a different conversation, Ben, because here we are. Here we are in the thing that I predicted to you about 4 years ago, I think. Do you remember that?
You've predicted a lot, Mark, over the years.
Well, I remember we had a sort of, what was it, a men's gathering, I suppose you could call it, in Bath, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed up till the small hours and I was freaking everybody out with my talks of satanic paedophiles and all that kind of stuff. And, it was all a bit dark at the time, wasn't it?
It was dark. And, I think it was some point shortly after that, we were in touch on Skype and Facebook and everything else. It seemed like I remember when we were down there at that men's group, when we were talking, the other guys were all kind of, it was an in joke. And we almost had our Mark Atwood buzzword bingo.
You were taking the piss out of me, were you?
We were totally taking the piss. Saying, okay, how long will it take before he mentioned Satanism, paedophiles, this, that, the other, deep state? And, it was all a bit of a joke and, no one took it too seriously. But after a few months, it seemed as though to me, like, I can't say anything to Mark now before it all comes back to the same shit. And it is shit, whatever way you look at it. And I was kind of overwhelmed by this feeling of the world the place in space that you were inhabiting at that time, to me, felt toxic, right? And I felt like I don't want to be around this. So I broke off communications with you for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And we literally weren't in touch. And it's taken me that time of simply doing what human beings should do and observe the way that the world is and try and make sense of it, which is what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah.
To think, actually, this stuff that Mark was talking about, and I guess when was Pizzagate? Because that was
2016. That was about that time.
Okay. But it wasn't as massive at the time, but the world has really balanced out. There's so many more people now.
Yeah.
Who, I wouldn't say that they're all believers, and hard and fast believers in this evil conspiracy, but they're sure as hell asking questions, and that's a good thing.
Well, I've lost a lot of friends on the way. I lost my health. I almost lost everything because this knowledge is awful, and I don't know why I had it. It was just the way my brain works, my own experiences, my own journey, and I came across this stuff, and it added up. And then you start, but it's I'd get invited to dinner parties, and I'd be, like you said, blah 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 blah, blah for hours, and I used to get really upset with people. I got upset with myself because it's really, really dark. It's really the darkest thing you can imagine, and it was shocking. And then for myself, I don't know if I told you this, but it got really bad. I was drinking too much. I contemplated suicide not long ago, 18 months, 2 years ago. And I was faced with a choice, really a kind of choice from God. Do you want to go, or do you want to carry on? Because this is, and I've got 5 kids, and I carried on. And now I'm speaking about it publicly because it's time for all of us to speak publicly. And I've seen that you are speaking publicly. You've got you know, on Facebook, you're obviously doing loads of stuff. And what I noticed about, you know, one of the things I love about you is that when you're like a dog with a bone. Once you get a sniff of something, you don't let it go. You know, that's why you've written all the books you've written, you know, and that's why you're making didgeridoos, you know, and I really wanted to speak to you about the statistics, because out of all the people I've met in my life, professionally and personally, you're the guy I'd go to for statistics, because I know that you don't let them go, and you've been posting pretty much daily about statistics. So before we get into the statistics, what I know that the pandemic is probably the reason why so many people are looking into this stuff now, because you can't, you know, it just doesn't add up, does it?
No.
You know, no sane person can look at what any government's saying or doing and say this makes sense, because it doesn't.
No.
And it's amazing how emotion gets in the way of intellect. You know,
it's incredible. Is it the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I've never heard of that. What's that?
No, it's the natural resistance that you have when something challenges your belief system. You will defend it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, this is why I lost so many friends, because, you know, if I'm sitting at a dinner party and people are talking about the football and I go, by the way, the Queen's a lizard, you know, it's too much. And she eats children. It's too much, you know, I you know, I'm guilty as charged, because I couldn't stop myself, because it's just too mind-blowing. And it was like, and I'd be like going, look, you don't understand. They want to kill us. They want us dead. That means you and me. And I'd have people say to me stuff like, well, the world is overpopulated. Maybe it's a good idea that there's less people. I was like, well, let's start with you. What do you want to start with your family? What are you talking about? Are you insane?
Yeah.
You know, and that's.
But you can't just dunk people in head first with that thing. And, you know, like I said, that there has been a sequence and a series. And when you look back, you know, people have had their moments where it's shattered the mirror.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the first one for a lot of people, World Trade Center 7.
Yes.
I mean,
gun.
You know, that for me, not at the time, I have to say not at the time, but looking back, you know, as soon as, because they didn't make a fuss about it. And that's what you've got to realize. Number one thing, you cannot believe a thing that the mainstream media says, not a thing.
Well, most people still don't even know that there was a third tower.
No.
You know? And what's really depressing is my eldest son tells me that when he talks about stuff like this with his friends, they don't even know what 9/11 was. It was like a plane crash. I'm like, what? Oh my God. You know, that's how they get away with this shit. Yeah. And the other way they get away with it, or they've got away with it for so long, is because no human being can contemplate the horror of what they've done. Mm-hmm. So that's why they still believe the government. I just can't believe how, but it is totally hypnotism. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but you know, when Tony Blair, that fucking arsehole, when he brought in the digitization of TV and stuff, I remember coming home one day and the kids were watching TV and I walked past them like 3 times. They couldn't see me. They literally couldn't see me. And I was like, they're hypnotized. They are totally hypnotized. So the TV went, then I stood up against then I started studying common law, and I stood up against the TV licensing in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I was shaking like a leaf when they came to the door. I knew they were going to come, and they came, and I had my phone and I was prepared, and I had the phone on and I was recording, and the guy says, are you blah blah? And I said, I'm not answering that question. And then I said, I refute your implied right of access to this property. Now please leave. Mm-hmm. He did. And I was like, whoa, it's like magic. It was like a magic trick, but I'm still shaking. And it was because of, there was a guy called Tony Rook who made that film with Matt Campbell. I'm going to be interviewing Matt later today, called Irrefutable, which was all about Building 7, really, you know, irrefutable evidence of 9/11 being an inside job, and that film was made specifically for firefighters and policemen, and Tony did a great job on that. But, you know, it's such a mountain to climb to get people to wake up to it. But he'd actually taken the BBC to court in, I think it was 2015 or something like that, maybe 2014, and he took them to court they took him to court for not paying his TV license. So his defense was, by paying this license, and this is what I said to the TV licensing guy, I said, if I was the person that you say that I am, and I'm not saying that I am, I wouldn't pay the license for the following reasons. Because if I did, I would be supporting a terrorist organization due to subsection 16, I think it was, of the 2003, 4, 5 Anti-Terrorism Act, which says if you knowingly support an organization with money that is actively supporting terrorism, then you're breaking the law. And I said the BBC didn't reported on Building 7 falling 25 minutes before it actually fell.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he just looked at me and said, I'm not going to get anything out of you, am I? I said, no, you're not. And he drove off.
Bro.
So we've gone down a cul-de-sac there.
The COVID pandemic it seems to me like it's the last roll of the dice.
Well, I hope so. Otherwise, we're all dead anyway. Because, one of the things that really got me, I know Alex Jones has been, called a Mossad agent and all sorts of things, but he made a few films in the early 2000s, two of which really stuck out for me. One was the film when he snuck into Bohemian Grove and filmed the elite. We shouldn't really call them the elite, the scumbags, doing satanic rituals to a giant owl called Moloch, right? Which is like, if anybody knows their Satanism, they'll know what Moloch is. Go and look it up if you don't. But the other film was his interview with Aaron Russo. Did you ever see that?
No. I don't think so.
It's really worth digging out. So Aaron Russo was a kid from the streets in New York, I think, and he became really successful and ended up becoming, I think it was Bette Midler's agent. And then he made movies, and he produced a film that you and I probably really liked called Trading Places. Do you remember that Eddie Murphy movie?
Yeah, I love it. Dan Aykroyd. Great film.
Yeah, great film, right? Made lots of money and then got invited, then became friends with one of the Rockefellers. Mm-hmm. And at dinner, the Rockefeller, he tells the story. I can't remember the Rockefeller's first name, but he said, basically we're gonna crash the economy. We're gonna implant microchips into everybody, and we're gonna control their bank accounts. We're gonna control them. If they don't behave, we'll just turn them off. Aaron Russo was like, what the fuck? He said, well, you're in the club now, so you don't have to worry about it. You're safe. He said, I don't want to be in this club. He was like, I'm sorry, but what? I'm one of them, which is us. Mm. So, and that was an incredible interview. And that was like, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago for me. So this was my own rabbit hole. As you know, my own rabbit hole started in the Air Force 30 years ago, but it was a slow process. But, then I came, how life is. You just meet people who the teachers arrive when you need them. And there were people that popped up. For me, there was a stand-up comic from Canada who gave me a copy of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion in a curry house in Rusholme in Manchester after a gig. And I crapped my pants. I read that document and literally crapped my pants because it was a plan outlining, it was written, I think it was an overheard meeting in Russia from the early mid-1800s. And it just laid out the plan. World War I, World War II, World War III. This is what we're going to do. We're going to destroy Europe with immigration. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It was like, you go and look at that document or search for it now, and it's all anti-Semitic, load of nonsense. It's a hoax, blah blah blah.
But it's not all covert like that. If you look at the Club of Rome have published books saying very similar.
Well, exactly, and I'm looking up at my bookshelf here because there were books written in the 1770s, 1780s about the Illuminati then. Beware the Illuminati. These guys are bad. This is what they're going to do. This is 300 years ago. Yeah. So, but they pulled it off. They pulled it off with mass media. They've rewritten history. They've controlled. They put us in a prison with the education system right from birth. And this is how do you argue with somebody who's got a PhD in physics who says your consciousness is that's a load of nonsense. This is why they I think when they took Graham Hancock and Rupert Sheldrake off TED, that was a big whoa. Graham's talk was called The War on Consciousness, and Rupert's was all about the corrupt scientific system. And they're wonderful guys to listen to. And then it's like, well, you can't read. Why are they taking that off? It's supposed to be a place to spread ideas, and they said it was false science. And as you go, over years, these things accumulate, and you can't not see what they're doing. after a time. But one of the key things is get rid of the TV. I know you don't watch TV, do you?
Barely.
Same here. I mean, I don't watch it at all, actually. I'll go online if there's anything I want to watch. I won't watch any of the American series. People keep saying to me, "Do you see that thing on Jeffrey Epstein on Netflix?" I'm like, don't watch Netflix. It's part of the control grid. It's a globalized, it's now the global control grid, you know? BBC was the UK, then you had CNN and it's, whatever in the US, but now Netflix is not good, not a good place.
Yeah. And the distribution of wealth is now just such that big money can and has infiltrated its way into everything. I mean, I've been big on, doing a lot these days on biohacking and, how to be a healthy, fully rounded human being. And Rockefeller and Carnegie created the pharmaceutical cartel 100 years ago.
120 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So and
took over the medical education institutions, which is why the doctors...
Which is all part of it. You have to own the channels that authorize who can practice, who can't practice. And then
vertical integration.
Yeah. And the same has happened with food. And people think that all these agencies that, like the American Medical Association, right? You cannot be licensed as a medical practitioner or a doctor in the US unless you have graduated from a school that is licensed by the American Medical Association, which is not a government thing. You cannot vote out the people. It's unaccountable. And it was set up with big piles of money from Carnegie and Rockefeller back then. And part of the deal was that their foundations would give very generous grants to universities and medical schools. The only condition is that you have to have one of our men on your board to advise you. Fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's so close to organised crime. It is organised crime.
Oh, it is organised crime. I mean, and then they took over the Fed.
Yeah,
and they killed everybody in the Titanic that opposed them.
Yeah,
and then they started World War I immediately. It's like what? Everything's a fiction. The 20th century, everything we know about life is a complete fiction.
Yeah.
So we could talk about all of that for hours, but what I wanted to get to with you today, if you don't, and we can come back and have further chats later, is the statistics. Because when this started, I think my first post on Facebook was something along the lines of, "Oh my God, I've been waiting for this day for years," right? I knew this was coming. I knew something big was coming because they've got to make their move for the New World Order. And if anybody doesn't believe that, just go and look at Georgia Guidestones, massive 30 million pound granite thing in America, which states we want to keep the population under 500 million. Well, the implication of that is 6.5 billion of us have to die. So, you don't spend 30 million on a massive granite installation unless you've got some serious clout. And one of the things they do is they have to tell you what they're doing before they do it.
That's interesting.
And that's because of the law of karma, because they understand. I mean, I could go down this rabbit hole all day, because what I've realized is that reality isn't what we think it is, and magic is real, and they use magic and they use the law of karma and they use all these universal laws because that's why they've hidden all of that stuff from us. So when it kicked off, I knew what it was. I knew it wasn't a virus, right? So I was scared. I admit that I was afraid because I knew this was it, and what are we going to do? And I was freaked out, and I stayed up all night, every night, watching all of Trump's press conferences. And I was like, what is he a good guy? Are there good things? I mean, I've been reading Q for 2 years. I mean, I think you and I exchanged a few things. And I think I said to you, either Q is real or we're fucked. I think we had an exchange like that. And, this is now 5 months into it. So what you did is what Ben does, right? You go out in the garden barefoot, make didgeridoos, but then you come inside and then start looking at the stats. So let's talk about what you found.
Absolutely. Look, if you make me presenter, I can share my screen.
I will do that.
Or make me the host, is it?
You should be able to do it now.
Okie doke. Right, let's have a look at this. There we go.
Hopefully this will record. Are you recording this as well as me?
No, I'm not currently, but Zoom will do it for us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so basically, I've been following the numbers from the very beginning, and you know, full disclosure, I had a similar feeling to you at the very start. This something doesn't feel right about it. Okay, so all we can do is we can go off. I mean, there's a few things. You've got your orthodox information that you get through the mainstream that tells you one story. Then you've got the public statistics that they issue. And one thing we can do is line those up against each other. And I think a third area is all the anecdotal evidence that is piling up on Facebook. And it's brilliant. You know, you can share a post which has got 200 examples, 200 screenshots of people saying, my grandma fell down the stairs and broke a hip and died, you know, the next day in hospital, and it was put down to COVID. People who've been, you know, terminally ill with cancer put down to COVID, all that kind of stuff. So now, anyone who's got that natural resistance, where the natural resistance is going to be overwhelming, is going to say, oh, it's just anecdotal. So what you're left with? You're left with your mainstream.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is why I wanted to talk to you, because I have arguments all the time. People say, well, prove it with peer-reviewed papers, prove it with data, and it's like, well, okay, quite easy, actually.
Yeah. So there's a lot of sources of stats from the UK, from Worldometer, all those places. Now, I've basically been tracking those from the beginning. So yeah, I mean, this is just a simple example. I've got, you look at, for example, the COVID deaths, and we always have to say, whatever they say, these, you know, they say these are COVID deaths, but from the very beginning, the media were very sneaky, saying people have died having tested positive, or people have died with the COVID virus, right? And they were very, very careful about that for a long time. Now they're saying people dying of COVID, people died of COVID. They've just taken the gloves off. They don't care now. But the government, on multiple counts, have been, I would say, completely guilty of cooking the books, inflating the numbers, and they've had to admit it. But it's almost like this government's, I'm talking about the UK in particular, but it's similar elsewhere. This government's default defense is to say, oh, there were errors in accounting, there were errors in this, and to kind of play this bumbling but lovable Boris kind of personality, you know. And this is the same group of people that managed to lose the report and the files on the Westminster paedophile scandal.
I mean, they're very good at that.
Entirely. How somebody must have sat there for 48 hours with a shredder to lose those, and then burn them and bury them in soft peat. It's ridiculous. So,
you know, on that subject, Theresa May, when she was, I think,
Home Secretary in the 80s.
No, in the under Cameron, she was Home Secretary, I think. And the first thing she did as Home Secretary was delete all references of her father from the internet.
Really?
Her father was best friends with a mass murdering doctor who made Shipman look like a cuddly toy. Mm. I'm not actually sure that he was her real biological father, because if you look into it, it may be that she was Hitler's daughter. Mm. But that's a conspiracy theory, which we're not going to dig into today. But I actually met Tom Watson. You remember him? Mm. Who stood up in Parliament and said, right, we need to investigate this, blah, blah, blah. And then there was that Philip Schofield thing on the TV when a list of names was shown, but it wasn't actually shown. And then it was just theatre, right? You know, they call it the theatre of politics because they're all actors. All of them are actors. You can't believe a fucking thing they say. No. And they've got to go. That system has to go.
And, Mark, I mean, 12 months ago, 15 months ago, I was a card-carrying Labour member.
I know. I remember you going on about Corbyn, and I think we had an exchange, and I think I sent you a message, or I said something to you like, it's a waste of time, Ben, and you were like, no, there has to be hope. There has to be hope. And I was like, well, that's what they did with Obama. That's what they always do with the hope thing. You know, they dangle it in front of your nose. You think it's real. You put all your energy into it, and then what happens?
Yeah,
it's the same all the way through. I mean, I've been through that my whole life. I'm totally politics is just bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. They mentioned that in the Hunger Games. There's a very, very good bit in the Hunger Games, I think the second film, where who's the guy?
I've never watched the Hunger Games because I can't bring myself to watch it.
Don't bother. Okay,
it's Illuminati pre-programming. I'm just
yeah, but you know,
in fact, you've got to wipe out most of Hollywood now because when you know what these people are.
Yeah.
There was one film I watched the other night with Joe, my son, which was Braveheart.
Mm-hmm.
Mel Gibson has actually stood up against these fuckers, and what a film that was.
Mm. But again, it gives you hope. You know.
Yeah, there's that word again. You've got to stop it, Ben. Stop it. Do you remember that sketch? Stop it.
They've got to allow you a glimmer.
Yeah.
So let's work through some of these numbers because we'll start light and then we'll get into the really serious questions. Okay. So deaths in the UK peaked very, very, very sharply and dropped off. Okay. And at the same time, testing has gone up and up and up and up. That's absolutely basic stuff. Right, next one. So this is where I've been tracking the official stats that they've been publishing weekly, and it's still coming out. Came out last week, right? So I hope you can see this. All right.
Yeah, I can see it fine. I just probably need explaining.
That's fine. So the red line here is the average all-cause mortality in England and Wales over the last 5 years. Okay. And as you expect, it peaks in January. That's the height of the main flu season. And it tapers down in the summer. People are getting more vitamin D, whatever. And then it goes up again later, right? The blue line is the all-cause mortality in 2020. And the green line here is deaths attributed to COVID. And I won't say COVID deaths because, you know, how many examples have we seen?
Yeah.
You know, and we also know, by the way, that everyone working in the NHS is under strict orders. And I've had this firsthand that trusts were issued with instructions to say to all of your medical staff, do not breathe a fucking word about this, or there will be, you know, serious trouble. And
how can they contain that though?
It's but plausible deniability. I mean, this is the thing. When you own the mainstream media, and when you, I mean, we can go on about how social media could have been and promised to be something amazing. And it is something amazing, but at the same time, we are feeding all this massive amount of data to unknown, well, many of them known, but...
Did you get to watch the film Shadowgate? I put a link up to it.
I've not watched it yet.
It's on BitChute now, and that's about whistleblowers from the NSA talking about how they took the data, everything about what everybody does and thinks, and they use an algorithm to affect the outcome, to control minds, literally to control minds, but with the kind of stuff that people see on social media. So we're all subject to mind control, all of us.
And they've got us all fighting each other.
Well, divide and conquer. I mean, you know, you go into a shop and without a mask, you can feel it. You know, it's just ridiculous.
It's like Nazi Germany. It's like, you know, you're getting people literally informing on their neighbours.
No, it's shocking. It's shocking.
And you know, you have to wonder whether the previous flu scares, you know, Ebola, SARS, swine flu, all this stuff, whether they were actually just warm-ups for this.
Definitely, because they're all fake, you know, and AIDS as well. You know, Dr. Fauci's got his name over all of those things that you just mentioned.
Absolutely.
All of them. Dr. Death, I call him.
If you want to get really deep into that stuff, there's a book
called... You know, I'm sat here chatting to you, you know, casually having a bit of a giggle, but this is fucking serious, right? My grandfather died during this pandemic, and I couldn't go to the funeral because it was in England and I'm in Ireland. And I had to watch his funeral on a fucking laptop.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go into why he died. I mean, he was 91. He had a good innings, but you know, I've had to put that to one side, put it in a little box because there's absolutely nothing I can do about it right now. Yeah. Which is one of the reasons why I decided to start this channel because, you know, I'm mad as hell, really, and So, I'll just recompose myself.
Go to your window, open it, lean out and shout, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore."
Well, I saw that on your Human Unleashed thing the other day, because that film was Network, wasn't it? 1974, Peter Finch, was it?
Can't remember.
I think it was one of the best Hollywood movies ever made. Yeah, that was a quote from that film where a TV presenter stands up and says, "Fuck this," live on air. Bit of a Ricky Gervais moment. You see, he gives me hope. I hope to God he's a good guy. I love his work, but he also put a tweet out saying, "Stop fucking kids," to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that was after the Golden Globes speech he did, which he must have been briefed, He must. I'd love to have 10 minutes with Ricky Gervais in a pub. But anyway, let's carry on.
Okay, so look, two major things that stand out from this graph. Okay.
Yeah.
So the green line is deaths attributed to COVID. The blue line, as you can see, this big gap between red and blue is the increase in mortality, which you can clearly see only about 60–70% of that can be attributed to the alleged COVID mortality. So what we can infer from that is something else is killing people. Something about lockdown is killing people, but actually probably several things about lockdown, okay, which we'll get on to. The other thing that you have to notice is that all-cause mortality in the UK, I'll zoom in a little bit onto this. No, I won't. No, actually, so all-cause mortality has actually been below the average for the last 7 weeks of reported data. Okay.
Yeah.
So fewer people are dying now, even with COVID, which is, as you can see, the curve is flat. Remember the first 2 weeks, it was all about, got to flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. And let's just look up Google Trends. Okay.
Yeah, just before you look at that, do you think that this mask wearing Nazism is going to be given the credit for that graph?
That's very interesting. Yeah, well, we'll get onto that.
It's just a thought that's just occurred to me.
Absolutely. So look at the activity around the phrase "flatten the curve." So this is United States. It's the same in the UK as well. Okay. So over the years, so no one mentioned the phrase "flatten the curve," "flatten the curve." Suddenly, for a couple of weeks, it was on everyone's lips.
That bump on the left there, that was me typing that in back in August last year, because it was relating to my belly.
Yeah.
How do I flatten my curve?
But since then, right?
Yeah.
As soon as the curve started to flatten, they stopped talking about it. So they're constantly moving the goalposts, right? We've got 2 weeks to flatten the curve, they said. We've got to impose lockdown. Okay, so they impose lockdown and everyone says, yes, all right, leaders, we will obey and oblige. And since then, not a dicky bird about flatten the curve. Okay. And Google Trends is fantastic. I've been using this.
Right. You and I have been using this for 20 years, I know.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. So let's move on to testing versus cases. So one of the things that you'll notice is that they were obviously, at this point on the graph, they were talking about deaths a lot. And then silence. They've stopped talking about deaths. Why? Because no bastard's dying of it, or even related to it. This is I can't even believe this green line has gone so low, because they've been fudging the numbers anyway.
Yeah, I know.
It's mad. So look, so cases, and this is positive test results. This isn't sick people. This isn't dead people, right? This isn't people in hospital. This is how many tests. And we know that they've actually fudged this as well, because they've double counted loads and loads and loads. And apart from anything else, the test is utterly worthless. Utterly worthless, right?
Because, I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that what is a virus?
No.
Because from my understanding, a virus is something that actually gets created in your body as a response to overtoxification. So you can't actually catch a virus. And I lost a lot of friends through this on Facebook.
Yeah.
Unless a virus is put into you. And I do believe that those nasal swabs at the beginning from China were tainted with this.
Well, even if it's put into you, there are very, very serious questions on that. And the Virus Mania book, which is now, I've been informed, has been updated with a new edition covering COVID. Even when it's put into you, you remember a lot of people talking about the Spanish flu in the 1910s.
Radar.
Right? Yeah. A new non-natural EMF was introduced. Mass electrification. So around the same time, Titanic, World War One, electric grids went up all over the country, and radar came in. Okay, so we could say it's a coincidence, and I am still prepared. It will take an awful lot of convincing, but I'm still prepared. I will entertain the idea that there is such a thing as a communicable pathogenic virus that can give you an illness. Okay, I have to leave the door open for that, because otherwise, I would be a science denier, because the whole point of science is that you constantly have to question the orthodoxy, which is what gave us asbestos, and more doctors smoke Camel than any other cigarette, and the food pyramid, and thalidomide, and all these things where the science seemed to be settled. They brought something out and it's killed a bunch of people, and
if you go back to what you were saying about Rockefeller and those guys, and the guys that what's the name? IG Farben. That company funded World War II, Hitler, everything via Bush's granddad, via Wall Street. These guys have this web of misinformation where they've been killing us and killing. I mean, everything you just mentioned, even like thalidomide, you could do probably similar graphs. If we had Google Trends back in the 60s and 70s, you'd see very similar patterns.
Yeah.
What I think is one of the things that's going to help us as a race enormously is the fact that we recorded everything that they've done, and we can analyze it like this. So I keep my mind open to. I don't deny anything, but what I do is keep open-minded about everything as well. So and I don't trust anything that comes from mainstream science or media. But I'm not saying that it's all wrong. But I know them well enough to know how they mix some facts in. This is what they do on the news. They'll tell some truths within the news, but then some big fat whoppers. Like weapons of mass destruction, or the building 7's about to already collapsed when it hasn't. Next to a story about a cat up a tree, and it's just constant confusion.
Yeah.
So
I had a great conversation with a friend on Facebook today, and I posted this thing about how easily somebody can disguise a small child as the opposite sex, and in 3 minutes, look at this, went from boy to girl, right? And he said, this is it's not such a biggie. Parents will turn up at school and complain, and I'm like, well, dude, you're not a parent. But apart from that, 100,000 children going missing in the UK each year.
It's more than that. It's much more than that.
But this is what I said, and he said, no, because if that was the case, it would be all over the news.
Yeah. I know. It's like, what?
Give me your reasoning. Give me your reasoning for this. He said, well, the news reports when children go missing, like Madeleine McCann,
which they do not stop going on about.
I know.
She's the only kid that ever went missing.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, well, look, if they reported every single one, there wouldn't be time for anything else on the news. So he's working off this assumption that surely the news report what's going on. But
it blows my mind that people still believe the news. It really,
and that's a false assumption. It's a logical fallacy. Anyway.
So also, I just want to say, it just come back to me that I took 2 of my kids on a trip to London in February, and one of them got what you would say were the symptoms of this virus. Even though I know you can't catch a virus, and I don't know why he got the symptoms, but back then, I'd been aware of a thing. I'm not going to say what it's called because this is going on YouTube, but the chemical symbol is ClO2, right? I'd been aware of that for about 4 years, and a friend of mine near here had some, and I bought some, and I got some in the cupboard because I'd heard it, because it says on the packaging kills all viruses. It actually says it on the package. And it's used for water purification. But you can use it on your own body. You're 70% water, so it made sense to me, right? But also vitamin C. And I just bought a massive packet of vitamin C and just overloaded him, right? And it was gone within 24 hours. I didn't do it properly either. I should have done it every hour. But I think I gave him about 20 tablets in one go, because your body uses up vitamin C, but also zinc. The big problem, we're all deficient in zinc. In fact,
they go hand in hand.
Just before this call, I was listening to an American doctor on Facebook Live who was saying, look, you're all deficient in zinc. And he's giving away free zinc. He's just saying, look, I think it's freezinc.com or something like that. I'll try and find the link and put it beneath this video. He's literally going, I'm pissed off. I'm a doctor. You're deficient in zinc. So I bought a load of zinc just to cover the shipping and handling. I'll send out 2,000 packets of zinc. Every adult should have between 25 and 50 milligrams of zinc per day. I just did a road trip. My son got a bit of a cold. We went straight to the pharmacy and got zinc and vitamin C. Started taking it every hour. Within 3 hours, he was fine again. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, here's another story on that, which relates to the germ theory, okay? Because and everyone listening should know the germ theory is not the only game in town. There's the terrain theory, the pleomorphic theory of what these tiny little microbes are and where they come from, okay? And it's not settled science. There's orthodox science, but that's a different matter. That's what the media has agreed that we should believe in, okay? So when my mother died suddenly 10 years ago, a few days later, we were organizing the funeral, stuff like that, and I came down with the most vicious fever, and I turned red. I looked like a fucking Oompa Loompa, right? And it was like, I don't know if you've ever had like high dose niacin thing. You get this kind of sunburn thing and your skin tingles.
No, I just look like this naturally.
And I felt absolutely rotten, okay? And my sister and her husband were over from Egypt. And in Egypt, you can get any drug you want over the counter, which I love. I mean, that's much more anarchistic than this ridiculous situation we've got. And he said, here, have this. And it was like a bullet-shaped wax paracetamol suppository.
Yeah, it sounds like a suppository.
Yeah. And so, I popped it in. 12 hours later, the fever was gone. Yeah. It was like 2,000 milligrams of paracetamol in one go.
It was paracetamol?
I think so. And it just blew it away, right? But here's the interesting thing. I didn't catch anything.
No.
Then. The fever came out of me. And this is another really, really important. Every parent should know this. Ignore what the GPs tell you. If your baby or child has a fever, fevers are there for a reason. Yep. Your body does not know how to work against you.
Yeah.
It doesn't know.
Yeah.
So if a fever, the raise in temperature is something that your body will do in order to blast away an infection or something that's wrong, okay? And very often what you'll find in hospitals is people go in with one thing, they'll end up with pneumonia.
Tell me about it.
Because they're breathing stale air.
Tell me about it.
Drenched in Wi-Fi. The fucking lights are on 24/7. There's noises and things that go beep. And some bastard wakes you up every 2 hours during the night to take your readings, okay?
Yeah, then you get hospitals are designed, they're death machines. I was going to tell you this, actually. You probably don't know this, but they've built €1 billion hospital near Dublin for children in the last few years. Mm-hmm. I'm into my symbolism. Mm-hmm. This hospital is built in the shape of an eye.
Really?
It's huge. Go and look it up, the Dublin Hospital, shaped of an eye. And the eye represents the planet Saturn. They worship Saturn, which is Satan. It's a massive child-stealing machine or child-killing machine that they're building in this country. Yeah.
So you're in hospital, you end up with bronchitis, pneumonia. It's pneumonia that kills off most people, and you get a fever. And people with cancer do this, and all kinds of illnesses. And the fever is your body's last-ditch attempt to get rid of the sickness. And then they go, he's got a fever. Now let's pump him full of antibiotics and other stuff. And that's what kills people. I'm convinced of it. But we'll talk more about this as well in a bit. Yeah. So back to the Spanish flu. There was researchers in it's not Coney Island, it might have been Coney Island, a couple of islands, one on the east coast of the US, one off San Francisco or California. Groups of researchers, it's around World War One, and they were trying to prove that the Spanish flu was communicable. But I'll send you something on this because everyone should read this. So you put it in the notes or whatever. They basically experimented. They had healthy army volunteers, and they started off by, sneeze onto a hanky and you wipe this on your nose. And they ended up going as far as you had to go around 40 people who were sick with the Spanish flu and let them cough in your face. And then they were taking every fluid they could get hold of, including blood and bogey and whatever else, and injected it into healthy people. They could not make a single person sick.
Fascinating. And I would totally believe that.
I have a friend that I've spoken to firsthand who is a frontline physician in the UK, tried the same thing, basically taking swabs off COVID patients, wiping them up his own nose, right?
Really?
No symptoms whatsoever. Okay? They're lying to you. If it's news, they're lying to you.
Oh, are they? Yeah. Oh, Jesus, that's a bombshell.
So you look at this. So, we were talking about how flatten the curve disappeared. And then suddenly deaths disappeared because people stopped dying. Even the cases have dropped down to nothing at all. But they're talking about cases. And the reason why the blue line go up and up and up, over 200,000 tests a day. What does that cost? Can you imagine what that costs?
Well, even at 10 quid a test, it's 2 million quid a day.
Yeah.
It's probably 10 times that.
So, that is the only way that they've managed to get this number of cases to rebound at all.
Yeah.
And by the way, even the test says, it will pick up if you've had the common cold. Yeah. Let's not even talk about flu vaccines. There's a very, very high correlation between flu vaccination in older people and death rate by country. It's undeniable.
I told my mum, stay away from the vaccine, stay away from all of that.
Yeah.
But they get so pressured into it. It's incredible. As soon as the doctor says something, they just follow orders. I mean, when she allegedly had cancer, I was there at the meeting, and the doctor said, and he went through a load of statistics, and he had his clipboard, to get her to sign permission to have chemotherapy. And as he went through it, I was going, hang on a minute. I said, that statistic you quoted 10 minutes ago, combined with the one that you just said, means that this has a success rate of less than 0.1%. And he went, anyway, and my mum went, where do I sign? Where do I sign? She was, just in a blind panic.
Yeah.
And that's what I see here, this fear. It's fear, right? So fear allows you to control people really, really well. But there's also there's an interdimensional aspect to this, because I happen to know for a fact that there are these interdimensional beings that feed off our fear. It's called Loosh. Are you familiar with that?
I remember Carlos Castaneda wrote about that in his Don Juan books.
Did you ever send me a copy of any of those? Because I got one sent to me mysteriously about 5-6 years ago, and then nobody said who. It was weird. It was just after I met John Perkins, who was he wrote The Economic Hitman. I thought it might have been him, but it might have been you. No, somebody sent me one of his books. That's if you want it to rain, just build the trenches, and the rain will come. Law of attraction.
Yeah.
These interdimensional beings are real. We know them as demons. When I lived in Morocco, they know them as the jinn. And as you well know, because your sister's in Saudi Arabia, in other cultures, these things are extremely real. They live their daily life around them. Entity possession is one of the things. I don't know if I told. I know I'm going off on tangents here. We'll come back to the things, but I saw a medium back in December, and spirit spoke through her, and they asked me if I wanted to be an exorcist. And I was like, what? Exorcist? And they said, well, you've got loads of experience. You've got tons of experience with demons. And I was like, well, that's true. Yeah, I have. I had to fight them my whole life. And I've seen them. So I don't know why I'm talking about that, because it's this curve, you see, it's this fear factor that people have to break through. And I think that, the reason why I want to talk to you is because anybody can see from just the graphs you've shown so far that this is fake.
Well, yeah, and so what I'm trying to do two things. Basically, I'm trying to find out the facts. I'm trying to find out the truth from this, and I'm holding two hypotheses in my mind at the same time, which I know is an incredible feat of intellectual gymnastics. But we can all do it.
If anybody can, you can.
So, on one side, I am trying desperately to prove that there is a pathogenic virus that has caused this.
Yeah.
Right? If I can prove that, great. That'll make my life a whole lot. It'll free up hours of my day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can happily wear my mask in the shop. Whereas right now, I can't. I cannot bring myself to do it. Anyway, so key point on this one, and I think this is strike one at least for the official narrative, is that they stopped talking about deaths because deaths dried up. Okay, deaths fell off a cliff.
How inconvenient.
Yeah. But so instead, they've ramped up testing, and now they're talking about cases. Or there's been a new surge of cases. And here's the other really weird thing. This has happened everywhere. They stopped talking about deaths when the curve flattened, and instead started talking about cases. Australia, which is just weird. They're talking about cases. Everyone's talking about cases now. But why? Because people have stopped dying of it. The curve flattened, right?
Well, they weren't dying of it in the first place.
Yeah. So hang on. So let's look at this, and this is something else that's odd. Comparing the percentage of tests that were done to new cases found, right? Back at the beginning, March, April, it was in the 30s, in 30%, down to 20%, down to 10%, down to single figures, right? And this is the graph of the percentage. So earlier on, 30%, right? Then by May, nothing. And even now, we are looking at half a percent. That's less than 1 in 200 tests done is even coming back positive. And these are stupid, faulty tests.
And this is government data.
Yeah, this is their numbers. I'm only using
this is their data.
Yeah. Okay. So, looking at the death rate. So I took the most recent recorded week at the time, which is the week ending 17th of July. Okay. 303 deaths attributed to COVID. Okay. Compare that to, which by the way, and for healthy people at this point in time, at this exact point in time, if you are healthy, as in no underlying health conditions, your chance of death in the first half of the year would be 1 in 40,000 from COVID. Okay. That is exactly the same as your chance of death of dying in a road traffic accident in the UK. Okay. Just to put things into perspective, but it's lower than your chance of dying of flu or pneumonia or cerebrovascular disease, like whatever goes off in your brain.
That's what happened to my dad.
Ischemic heart disease, dementia or Alzheimer's, right? More than 4 times as likely, or cancer, 7 times as likely.
Just Ben, it says 2018 in the top column. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, that was the most recent year that I could get those numbers from the ONS, the Office of National Statistics. So yeah, got 900, so over 800% more likely to die of cancer. Okay, we could talk about cancer, or we could do a whole booming episode.
Oh, we'll do it. That's a fungus, basically.
On cancer, yeah. Feeds off sugar.
It's a fungus. It's easy to cure. The ClO2 cures that as well.
Yeah.
Alkaline diet cures it.
Yeah.
Rife cured it in the 1920s with a frequency machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, this is not.
And they're doing it in the 1910s or 1920s. If you watch the film Fat, a documentary, they were putting in people on very low carb diets and curing cancer till it comes out your ears. There's people doing this now in Hungary. It's insane. Anyway,
a friend of mine a few months ago told me his uncle got given terminal cancer diagnosis. He went back in a month and it was all gone. And they said, what? We don't understand. Where's it gone? And all he did was not eat food.
Yeah.
So we did. He just drank water for a month.
Yeah.
No cancer.
This is something I've realized, that it's actually everything that happens to you is a stressor on your being. Okay. Yeah. anything that you eat is bad for you in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your body has to respond. It has to use energy. It has to use its resources to deal with whatever you put into it. The same thing goes for the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, and any magnetic fields that might be passing through you at the time. Okay.
I'm glad you said magnetic fields. Yeah.
The amazing thing is that your body is brilliant at dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? People that said that our ancestors used to live for 700 or 800 years. Okay.
And it says that in the Bible.
Yeah, Noah and etc. Lived that long. Now, throughout 99.99% of human evolution, we've lived in more or less the same conditions. Yes, the Earth's polarity has changed. The strength of the Earth's field goes up and down. We get solar winds. We get,
Now we're getting into a whole other area, which I think we should come back to for another video, because I know that all of human history is bullshit. And if anybody doubts that, go and look at Michael Tellinger, Graham Hancock, and just have a look at the work that they've done. This place had giants all over it. This place, Tabletop Mountain.
Yeah.
It's a tree stump.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Cut down. Now imagine what cut that down.
So,
but anyway, I digress.
You've got a level, right?
Yep.
You can deal with as much crap within that and be perfectly healthy and wonderful. What we've got now, shit food, poisoned water, non-natural EMFs,
chemtrails
and whatever that you're breathing in.
GMO.
Everyone's up here.
Yeah.
So you end up with inflammation, metabolic disease, all this stuff, cancerous cells. Your body can handle cancer cells, right? If it's allowed to. All you have to do is bring the level of stress down to a point where you can manage. And not eating is a brilliant one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there you go. The actual rate of death. Have you something going around Facebook as well that COVID is not even in the top 50 causes of death in Australia?
Okay, so look, have you got any more stats that prove beyond doubt that this is fake?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
Well, that was the warm up. This gets serious now.
We're just warming up.
Oh yeah. Okay. So here, this is a really interesting one. Okay, blue line. So this is England and Wales again, right? Blue line, alleged COVID deaths, which, as you can see, have come down to practically zero. Okay. Grey line is all-cause mortality in 2019. The orange line here, this top one, is all-cause mortality in 2020. So if you look again at, and the yellow line, right, is what you would get if you added all the COVID deaths onto last year's deaths. Okay. So what this means is, I can. There you go. So what this means is that this whole area between yellow and orange, right, are extra deaths not caused by COVID. Okay. So these are deaths from lockdown or deaths from something else. Okay. And I would argue that actually many of the deaths that have been attributed to COVID are actually caused by whatever is in this space here.
Well, it's stress, right?
It's a lot of things. I think it's also institutional murder.
I'm glad you said that. I'm not glad you said it at all, because it's horrible. But I think they've all had to sign these non-resuscitation orders in old people's homes in particular.
Yeah, which is we'll get on to that. We'll get on to
the culling of the population.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
Yeah,
I should say this isn't all the deaths. This is people who've died.
Yeah.
Okay, so this
I can see a care home from here. I can see it over there, and there's a friend of mine's mum in there, and they've not been able to see her for months.
It's huge business, and no doubt all these pension pullers are costing the governments lots of money. 200,000 people in the UK. I don't know about Ireland. 200,000 people in the UK, residents in care homes, of which about 10% were killed by COVID in this peak.
10%, which is a decimation, literally.
It is, but it gets weirder.
Okay.
So the yellow line is what you would expect if the COVID deaths were added to the normal deaths, okay? And the orange line is how many people have actually died. So what the hell killed all these people? Right, let's get on to that. And by the way, they stopped recording this since the 20th of June. They're not reporting this. This is from right now, from today. The last report was from the 20th of June. So we're nearly 2 months later, and they're just not doing it because it'll look wrong. Okay. So just back on that one then, the COVID deaths. Now, I've got friends who work in care homes. I've got friends who work in the NHS, okay? So in addition to being told not to speak to the press or to say anything public about policy, NHS trusts have been instructed, and I have this on hand on heart, first-hand report from an NHS professional, that they were told at the beginning, so this is like, late March, April, to turn away anyone who was coming in from care homes, right? My friend attempted to get time alone in the office with the notice that had been sent round, was unable to do it. They absolutely wouldn't do it. It's probably been burnt or whatever, right? So this is what happens, and you'll know this, Mark. If you've been visiting someone in hospital, if you've ever had to spend a night in hospital in the last however many years, if you're on ward overnight, general wards, 40–60% of the people on the wards are geriatric. This is what happens. We're not living, we're dying longer in this country. They are keeping people alive longer. And I don't want to get into the morality or the ethics of that, but, doctors, medics supposedly, they've taken an oath that they will do everything that they can to help a patient, right? They don't make that judgment. So what happens when you say, I'm sorry that the old Beryl can't come into hospital right now because there's a COVID risk, okay? Now, so what happens is, what normally happens, Beryl's in the care home or nursing home, which has a doctor that comes around once a day, let's say. Beryl gets sick, she's got a cough, okay? And she's weak and she's frail. So they get an ambulance, they ship her into hospital. Beryl will spend 1 night to 2 weeks in the hospital. The doctors will do what is necessary to keep Beryl alive and to get her back on her feet. And then they ship her back to the care home, right? And so it's keep alive care. And it's a huge cost in terms of time and resources for the NHS, okay? That's just the way it is. And that's the way the system has always been, right? When NHS trusts are instructed not to receive people from care homes, they'll have to be treated in the care home, then they can't come in, they can't have the whatever is needed, to keep them alive, so they die. And that is what I think is the cause of the majority of this. Okay, and that is at the very least institutional manslaughter. This is policy that has killed people.
Well, if we get through the other side of this, the court, the legal cases are going to be astronomical, and also the trauma in the medical industry is going to be unreal.
Yeah,
probably already is.
Yeah, and we've got thousands and thousands of medics in Spain and in Germany coming together, like in their tens of thousands, saying, we can't support this any longer. We can't stand for this anymore. Right? We're not.
Well, that brings up a lot of questions in itself, but I'll let you carry on with the stats.
Yeah. Okay. So they've stopped reporting that, obviously, because the numbers don't fit the story. Now, this is the killer. Okay. Red line, COVID mentioned on the death certificate. That doesn't mean the person died of COVID. Doesn't mean they had the novel coronavirus. It means, and we know how, you've got to be an idiot to have your eyes open on social media and not be inundated with stories of people who said that so-and-so, I went mad because so-and-so had COVID on the death certificate. I spoke to somebody the other day. No, it was my wife took our cat to the vets, spoke to the veterinary nurse there. She said, I went to the doctors the other day because I had a kidney infection. Doctor had to leave the room, and I snuck a look at my notes, okay? COVID-19 on the notes, right? Doctor came back in, and I said, what the fuck is this? You remove that right now, okay? It's going on all over the place. You know, we know that US hospitals get more money from, you know, the, whatever it's called, the Medicare. If it's a COVID-related case, or if they die, we know that it's like $38,000 if they're put on a ventilator and they die.
Oh, it's the same with chemo. It's like $70,000 if they go on chemo.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the survival rate, if you are put on a ventilator, is something like 0.5%.
It's not good.
It's tiny. It's basically a death sentence. Did you see the video of the nurse in New York, the ex-army nurse in New York, and her experience?
Yeah, yes, I did see that. Yes.
Scary stuff.
So we're killing people.
This is institutional. But this is the thing, when you've got owners, right, who control the media, control the government, control the legislation, you know, that's how they do it. That's, you know.
Well, like, you know, there's a few things that pop up there. For me, there was a friend of mine was like, you know, well, it was a couple of friends actually. A friend of mine's brother got put into hospital with COVID. Mm-hmm. And I just put up on Facebook a thing saying, look, I really don't think you can catch a virus and there's something else to this. He put up a post saying, can't catch a fucking virus, fuck you, Mark Atwood, because my brother's dying of this in hospital. And I said, look, we can't have this. I can't do this. I'm going to have to block you. I'm really sorry about your brother, but it's not what you think it is. And his brother's fortunately okay. He's good, came out of it. But people really because of the fear, people became very, or still are, very, yeah, you know, because I've got to go to a funeral next week and, you know, they died of COVID. So it's like actually more important than a normal death because, you know, it's COVID. And I'd be like, the fuck, you know, unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. So, you know, I was in the shop in Ireland last week and the guy had a mask on. He was selling me a school uniform and he was like, and he said something really awful. He said, yeah, because, you know, this is getting worse and it's now the teenagers to blame. I said, did you just say blame the teen? What? You're blaming the teenage, blaming them? What? And, you know, because I don't watch RTE, BBC, I don't watch any of that shit. Yeah, but that's what's going into their heads. Yeah. And then they're going, now these people are going around with the mask on, looking at the kids like, it's your fault.
Yeah.
What? These poor kids.
Yeah. And like you say, fear kills people.
Anyway, let's crack on.
Okay, this is the final strike for me. Now, I've been saying since the beginning, when they brought in the emergency measures, the lockdown, the bloody hand sanitizers, and, you know, you can't go to school, you can't go to work, you can't play sports, all this stuff, right? I said, okay, here's how we're going to know, right? They're telling us that COVID-19 is caused by a virus. B, this is a virus that you can catch or transmit to other people, right? Okay. And C, we are implementing these measures, all this lockdown stuff, okay, in order to slow or halt the transmission of the virus. We have to keep it below a level that the NHS can cope. The NHS has coped absolutely fine for obvious reasons, okay? Now, because a lot of the people who have died because they shut down the NHS. And never mind all the other elective surgeries and, you know, non-critical stuff and chemo thing, which, by the way, has probably saved a lot of lives. And I'll be very interested to see the cancer death rates, you know, at the back end of all of this.
Yeah.
I believe, I haven't got a source for this, but the sudden infant death syndrome has plummeted as well during this because babies haven't been going to their GPs for their jabs.
Thank God for that. That's a good thing.
We will see. We will see on all of this. And I'm not going to say anything categorically that, you know, isn't in the thing now. So I was saying from the beginning, okay, if this is true, it's a virus, it's communicable, and that these measures can be effective against it, here's how we'll know. That other diseases that are supposedly caused by communicable viruses that work the same way will also be reduced or eliminated in a similar degree to COVID. This is the facts as far as I've got it, okay? Red line, COVID deaths over time, shot up, dropped back down like a stone, flattened curve, okay? Compare, sorry, is this 2020? Okay, no, I think the data's are for, this is a previous year, okay? I think this is 2019, 2018, the flu one, so apologize for that. Okay, this is the historical flu. No, it's not. No, you're right. This is flu from this year. Okay, flu deaths from this year. It has to be this year.
Which looks normal, would drop during the summer and be about that in the
It is
winter.
normal. People die of the flu all year round. You get a big peak in the wintertime, and it should drop off. Now, the implications of this graph are shocking, whatever they are. And here's the thing, we can't be certain what they are, but whatever has caused the drop in COVID from 8,500 whatever deaths per day at its peak down to practically zero, flu has behaved normally. Okay. Now, I've asked this question on Facebook. Very smart friends, people who understand virology, epidemiology, to explain this. What could possibly produce this effect?
What do they say?
Well, some people have said, well, it behaves differently. Okay, so let's figure this through. Let's say that the COVID virus is 1,000 times more contagious than flu. Which, by the way, more people die every year of flu than have died of COVID, and we don't wear masks for that, right?
No,
and by the way, flu has a vaccination.
I know.
Yeah, and still more people die of the flu.
And that vaccination is probably causing that blue graph.
Who knows?
I do.
Who knows? But yeah, there's certainly a correlation between flu vaccination and.
Sorry, I've got to interject. I've got a GP friend. Years ago, I was talking about the relationship between autism and MMR, and they said there's no relationship. I'm a doctor. I know best, and I said, well, there is. Look at it. It's obvious. It screws up the biome in the stomach, and that's been. Wakefield proved this, and and look at the work he's done. So, no.
Oh, but Wakefield is credited, Mark. You can't.
Oh, well, I know. I mean, it's like you mention his name, and people are, he's killed people. What? He's saving people. But anyway, this is the topsy-turvy world we live in. And I said, okay. She said, no. She said, it's just that we're better at recognizing them. We're better at recognizing diagnosing them. So I said, well, if that's the case, where are all the old autistic people? That fucked her head up.
Very good question. Yeah, never thought of that one. Brilliant. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you just reminded me of that when you said it behaves differently. It's like I think Charlie Ward said something the other day about people looking at the stats and saying, "Oh, that's because there's less road deaths, because less people on the road because of lockdown." So that's why. It's just like people just make shit up.
If COVID
to justify their position.
If COVID is caused by a virus and flu is caused by a virus, what the hell is this? Okay, so got one person pops up saying it's far more contagious. So let's say that the coronavirus, novel coronavirus, is 1,000 times more contagious, and you only need a little wisp out of the side of your mask in Aldi, to infect somebody else, and it goes around. Apart from the fact that the young and middle-aged people aren't suffering at all, and it's still, as it has been from the beginning, the over 65s overwhelmingly affected. So if it's that contagious, then okay, and then maybe the drop in the red line could be explained by the fact that actually everyone's got it. Everyone's had it. It went around the country in wildfire. all that time. By the way, at what point did they tell us to, in the UK that we had to start wearing masks? Here.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. That's what this video is about. Why are you wearing a mask? Look at the stats.
Yeah. The government told us, if you are healthy, don't wear a mask. Here.
Yeah.
In the, at the peak, because that's what the science said. Okay. The World Health Organization said the same thing. There's still a sign up in a hospital in Australia saying, if you are healthy, here are 10 things you can do or whatever to minimize the risk of catching COVID. Don't wear a goddamn mask.
I saw that on Australian TV the other day. Don't wear masks.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, we can move on to that. So if it's very contagious, if everyone's got it, right, then let me just move that out of the way. How come the tests, how come these positive cases, red line, have dropped like a stone as well? Okay. If everyone's got it or everyone's had it, then the antibody test should be through the roof. It should be almost 100%. Or if people are walking around carrying it, then the PCR test should be through the roof.
I'm actually pleased to see this because when they started talking about ramping up the tests, I was thinking, oh, this is how they're going to spread it. They're going to spread it with the tests, So this proves that they're not doing that, which is very good news.
But one of the things that is confusing me is how they can have so many more cases then and so few cases per day now. Even when they're doing this many tests, it's like literally 1 in 200 is coming back positive. But yeah, I believe that the test results were as random as A-level results. But,
well, you saw I can't remember whether it was Tanzania or
President of Tanzania,
who was a microbiologist who got the test done on a goat and a papaya and a few other inanimate objects, and they all came back positive.
Yep. Yeah. I've heard of nurses in hospitals in this country who sent unused swabs in for testing, came back positive. So was it on the swab or what?
How many more pictures have you got to show us? Because you have conclusively proved with data that this is a fake.
This is it. This is the end of the show, end of the discussion anyway on this part. So it's either that everyone's got this virus, right? Mm-hmm. And it's no longer killing anyone, which it clearly isn't, or everyone already had the virus, right? Or COVID-19 is not caused by a communicable pathogen, which I believe is 100% true. Well, that's 99.9% true, right? Mm-hmm. I also believe if that's true, then, forget COVID. Take the red line out of the equation.
I'd love to forget.
Hasn't influenza been wiped out by these measures if the measures are effective? So what we have to conclude is whatever happens, it wasn't the bloody draconian measures. It wasn't the Nazi, measures that have been forced on us that has caused the death, the death of COVID.
Right. So that brings me to the next question. You know what that is?
No, go ahead.
What's this all for?
Okay, so you have to look at what we know. We know that the shift from talking about deaths to talking about cases indicates very powerfully that this is the initial purpose is to spread fear and alarm. Okay, if it hadn't, right? If there was any journalism going on within the mainstream news channels in this country, people would have been celebrating the flattening of the curve, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't. They were probably told they couldn't. Therefore, something stinks. It stinks to high heaven, Mark.
So what? Yeah. So I've got my theories. I'm just interested in what yours are.
Yeah.
Because I am a conspiracy theorist.
Quite right. So fear is one thing, control is another thing. And the third thing, right, okay, here's another implication of that line, that COVID line has dropped to almost nothing. No one's dying, right? you're more likely to die of loads of other illnesses, including cancer, which, by the way, the more we spend on cancer research, the more people die.
Oh, weird, that, isn't it?
Yeah, odd.
Mm.
So
we're going to have to do an episode on cancer at another point, because that is a big subject for me as well.
So I would say I think that the other implication of the red line is deaths have dropped to nothing. Cases have dropped to almost nothing. They're testing as fast as they can, as many as they can. They cannot come up with any numbers, right? Therefore, if no one's dying, we're either all immune, or it's stopped of its own accord, or it's weirdly seasonal in a way that flu isn't, right? So these viruses are completely different, right? So the only reason that I can come up with a solid reason why the government is still pushing the fear is vaccination.
Okay, so you believe at the moment that they've tried this thing, they want to get this vaccination thing. This is the thing I said at the beginning about everybody being microchips with these vaccines, that they're continuing to push that agenda.
I think that when you join the dots with our friend Bill Gates, major funder of the World Health Organization, major shareholder in vaccination pharmaceutical companies, who is on record on a TED talk, as you well know,
we can reduce the population by 10%.
Yeah, if
another decimation.
Yeah, if we do the right thing with birth control and vaccines.
He's already killed millions in India and Africa. He's a mass murderer, as far as I'm concerned. Needs to be in prison if he's not already been executed, which I think he has been, actually, but that's another story. But what I'm asking you, so if you think the objective is vaccination, why did they do such a bad job on the virus? Because surely if they want, if they've done a really good job on the virus, this is one of Bill Gates' phrase, we do a really good job on vaccination. If they've done a really good job on the virus and it was really dangerous and really killed lots of people, we'd all be queuing up for a vaccine already. But they haven't even got a vaccine ready. So, yeah. And this leads me to other conclusions.
And the common cold is allegedly caused by another coronavirus, and they've never been able to come up with a vaccine for that in 100 years.
So don't need a bloody vaccine, just deal with the cold.
Yeah.
Have a whiskey, chill out.
My personal belief is that, we have these cold seasons. As you saw in the COVID graph, it's the few weeks following each equinox, and we will see, we've been predicting this since day one, following the autumnal equinox, which is late September. So look out for week 1, 2, 3 in October, having another peak.
Right? Second wave, which I was listening to people yesterday go, there's a second wave coming. And when it comes, and I'm like, they're having these conversations about this, like it's a foregone conclusion because they've been programmed to know it's coming.
Interestingly, sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
Go back onto our friend Google Trends, right? Go onto Google Trends, type in
second wave,
and see, people have talked about second wave forever. See at the point that it jumps above the average. So it starts to become atypical. When? 15th of March.
Yeah.
When were the first cases reported in the UK? 15th of March. Okay, so that's in this country. So people were talking about second wave before the first wave had waved. Yeah?
Yeah, predictive programming. But what's it for, Ben? Okay. So let's assume it is for the vaccine. What do you think that is for?
Right.
Why?
And obviously, they planned this last year at Johns Hopkins. They had a simulation session.
Well, yeah, they had that big thing in China. What was it called? I can't remember what it was called.
No, there's one they did in the US. Where everyone showed up and they spent several days figuring out, what would the media have to say and all this kind of stuff. And they've published it.
I thought it was in China, but anyway, yeah. They always do a dry run. They always do the same as the false flag terrorism. They always do an operation. There's always a police operation going on at the same time.
Yeah,
they always do that.
Or a sim on the same day. It happened 7/7.
Yeah, and they always tell you what they're going to do next.
Las Vegas. So what is the reason? So vaccinations, the most likely thing to me, I'm not going to say categorically, but it all seems to point to bringing forward the UN 2030 kind of agenda,
which nobody's read.
One world government, single kind of currency, digital currency.
Okay, so you're buying into that New World Order thing now. You know the thing I was talking about years ago: the New World Order, the agenda, the one world government, one world currency, one world religion, the big plan, which involved killing 6.5 billion of us. You think that that's still going on? That's where we're headed.
I think that it's the best hypothesis that I can see from what's. I can't come up with any other rational explanation for what, even just the COVID stuff. So, and here's another thing that's interesting. We talk about the switch from talking about deaths to talking about cases. It happened globally at the same time. All these countries, the death rate dropped. Everyone suddenly, apart from Sweden, Belarus, Tanzania, and whatever, everyone suddenly started talking about cases. Oh, it's been a surge in cases. We have to introduce quarantine on Spain and France because cases, right? So what this means is, and this is why it's important. It's not our government that is doing this, or the Irish government, or the French government, or the US. There are forces behind all of these governments that are giving the instructions to the governments, and who has the clout and the influence to do that. It can only be what's commonly known as the deep state, the UN. A lot of this stuff, or whatever it is, and you've got much firmer ideas about what that is than I have. But like we started saying at the beginning, they have published this stuff from the beginning, and the UN Agenda 2030 and whatever, or it all ties in.
It does. What if this? I mean, one of the first books I read back in the 90s when I started really opening up to this was called The Hidden Hand, which everybody should read. And there are tons of books about the big conspiracy, because there's one conspiracy. It's not a theory. There's one conspiracy. It's a small group of people who want total dominion. Now, one of the reasons why people can't really believe that, find it difficult to understand, is because they're like, well, to what end? For what purpose? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
In the same way as people can't understand why anybody would want to eat a baby. I mean, it's just beyond.
And they look at these billionaires and say, never mind Rothschilds, but you look at, your Gateses and your Bezoses and Musks and stuff like that, and you go, these guys have got so many billions, they couldn't spend it in 1,000 lifetimes. They couldn't spend it. There isn't enough shit to spend it on, unless you were actually a philanthropist and you decided to, revolutionize and feed the world, which they could do, any of them, quite easily.
Oh yeah, 100%. But
so it's clearly not about that. It's clearly not philanthropy.
So, that leads you down lots of
about money.
No, it's nothing to do with money. They don't give a fuck about money, apart from controlling it.
They've already got the money.
Well, the money's just a made-up thing that they created to enslave people.
Yeah, it's fictional. Money is fictional.
It's totally fictional. So, okay, it's not about money.
So the only, and I've run this through as a thought experiment, right? When you get that powerful, and it reminds me of that awful interview that Charlie Sheen did, said, yeah, I'm on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's like, when you are so intoxicated with ego, power, the illusion of power, money, you can do anything you want. What's left, right? And what's left is that you want to. The best way that I can describe it is becoming a god. That's the thing. It's like how much you want to. Like, well, you said the word dominion. So you want to. It's not just about having all the stuff you can buy. You want to lord it over the ordinary people. You want to believe that you are a different breed to the rest of the people.
Well, maybe they are. See, your view there is totally valid and makes a lot of sense. The assumption, though, is that these are human beings. the assumption is, well, if I was a human being and I had all the money in the world, what would be next for me? How would I? And it doesn't make any sense when you think of it like that, because no human being could do that plan, in my opinion. But I'm not going to go on about whether they're human or not in this video. I believe, and I hope, and I'm pretty sure this is the case, that this plan's been known about. I told you earlier that there were books written in the 1700s about, why the Illuminati are bad and you should, blah, blah, blah. They got shut down, the influence grew and grew. There was a thing called common purpose that I looked into quite a long time ago, where they were just implanting people, brainwash people into all governments, local, national, international, because you can control the world with a very small number of people. You can create a revolution with a handful of people, Yeah. So it's the tail that wags the dog. So let's say this plan was known and that people tried to stand up against it. People that who got into power stood up against it. I'm thinking of JFK. If you look at JFK's Secret Society speech, it's mind-blowing.
I've just got Bill Hicks in my brain. And you know what? We kill those people.
People, yeah. Non-smokers die every day. Non-COVIDs die if Bill Hicks was here now, man, we would have a field day.
Bill Hicks and George Carlin.
It's a big club. You, me, ain't in it. It's a big fucking club. I've been posting that shit for years. Nobody seems to pay. Nobody pays any attention.
Nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care.
Yeah. Just going to, what do you do today, honey? We just invented a milk that's like a poison for babies. Night. Fuck, I miss those guys. JFK knew. He said it in a speech. You can look it up. Have you ever heard that Secret Society?
Oh, yeah.
He knew. He got killed. They were more powerful than I think that he knew. But he wasn't the only one that knew there was a plan. There were other people behind him that knew that there was a plan. It does not seem inconceivable to me that people in power, and I've been close to that. I've had lunch at Jimmy Carter's pilot's house in Georgia, and I was kicked out of the room when the men got together to talk about JFK and stuff. It was quite weird. It's not inconceivable that they would get together in secret and then start using things against them. And if they knew that this virus was coming, that it looks to me, it's so Monty Python right now. It's not inconceivable to me. I'm not saying this is definitely the case, but it's not inconceivable to me that the virus is now being used has been used as a cover by the good guys to get rid of. I mean, when you understand how deep...
Two thoughts. Yeah, it's a smoke screen, but is it nefarious or is it a smoke screen?
Look at the Beirut bomb last week. That was blatantly a nuclear explosion.
Right.
You look at all there are fires all over the world going on right now. I know that there are deep underground bases. There's like 10,000 deep underground military bases across the planet that have been used to support this child trafficking network. Child trafficking, there's 8 million kids minimum per year that go missing worldwide, minimum. And that doesn't count the ones that are bred underground for this massive, massive demand for the satanic ritual abuse, but also something called sounds a bit like dome, right?
Mm-hmm.
That if you looked into that.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. So that is the big thing, right? And then you start piecing it all together with Q. Follow the white rabbit. White rabbit is the representation of that particular product, which is derived. I've mentioned it in a previous video, so I'll probably get banned from YouTube anyway. But
this is kind of what I'm getting at. If you're that high on, because it's meant to be the ultimate high.
Yeah.
Well, that it's like you're trying to surpass the human state in some way.
Well, they live. Roddy Piper said it was a documentary. Put the sunglasses on, see the reptilians. Ike said it took me a long time with the reptilian thing, a long time to get into that. But you look back in history, reptiles everywhere. You go to the city of London, dragons everywhere, worldwide.
We've had this conversation before as well, and if you look throughout the scriptures, Satan can appear, and demons, jinns can take the form of snakes, reptiles, lizards.
3 things in every single religious text: slavery, serpents, and gold. 3 themes that are throughout every single religious text ever. Serpents equals demons, reptilians. Gold, big thing, and slavery. Anyway, we're not going to come to. I think that's a whole other conversation, and I'm not here to tell anybody watching this what is actually happening. What I really wanted to do was explore your data, and I think you've done a fantastic, an amazing job on that. And anybody with a rational mind watching this and seeing that data and then going and doing their own research will know that this isn't what it seems. And I think that's the purpose of this video, is really just to say, look, empirically, regardless of whether you think I'm a conspiracy nutter or not, empirically, this is not what it seems.
Exactly.
That's the first stage.
And it's not individual governments that are doing it. This is coordinated. This is I believe the evidence suggests that this is a global planned event.
100%. And that's what I wanted this video to show people. And you and I could talk for hours and hours about all sorts of theories and different things, because we're those kind of people. And I can't wait to have a beer with you at some point in Yorkshire, because I've not been over for a long time. But I really appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing your time with us today, Ben. And I hope people can. Is there anywhere people can go to find out more about your studies into this sort of stuff? I mean, is it?
Yeah, we've got we'll put a link on. So that I'm part of a business, a group called the Human Unleashed. As I said earlier on, I do a lot in kind of biohacking and health and stuff like that. And we put out a series of episodes on. So there is a membership that you can join for all the kind of health stuff. But we've done a series of freely available episodes all around COVID. And we started, I think, back in March. And pretty much everything that we predicted, we're still saying the same thing. So you can go along, I think it's thehumanunleashed.com/COVID-19. But if I can get you a link if you can add it to the description or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you can see our latest episode. We've done 19 of those.
Wow. That's a lot of work. I watched one last week. It was fantastic stuff. And I know, I've done this with you because I know people need to see empirical evidence, right? It's stage 1 of waking up, I think. Where you go with it from there is up to you. So everybody watching this, please do your own research. Don't trust anything I say. Don't trust anything Ben says. Go and do it yourself. That's what this is all about.
And those facts are all out there. Like you say, what you do with it is up to you. But I cannot escape, and I'm trying to escape that conclusion as well. I've got to, as otherwise I wouldn't be a rational person. I'm trying to escape that, but I cannot escape the conclusion that this stinks.
Well, I couldn't have ended this better. Thanks, Ben.
Cheers, Mark.
See you later.
Pleasure.